What if the warning everyone fears did not come from the Earth at all? What if it came from the far side of the sun, wrapped in silence, waiting to appear on the exact date some had whispered about for years? That date was the 29th of October, 2025, a day when a comet from another star moved into view. A day when millions felt something shift inside them. They did not have words for it. They only felt pressure in the chest, a strange alertness, a thought rising from someplace older than memory. Something is here. Scientists called it 3I/ATLs, an interstellar visitor, a wanderer that did not belong to our system. They spoke of dust and frozen gases. They spoke of gravity and orbital curves, but the world felt something else. People woke restless. People stared at the sky with no clear reason. People sensed the air tighten before they ever heard the name. Within hours, talk of prophecy began to surge. Some tied the comet to the Hopi ninth sign. Some insisted it was the blue star. Some said the countdown had begun. Most had never read a single line from a Hopi elder. Yet fear makes people claim symbols they do not understand. And excitement pushes others to twist someone else's sacred story into a loud headline. I have spent decades reading scriptures. I have studied Christian texts, Jewish texts, writings attributed to angels, accounts tied to darker realms, and I have spent long nights with the teachings of older nations who carry their wisdom without needing fame. People forget that native warnings are not casual predictions. They are teachings about human character. They are warnings about cycles. They are not toys for those seeking drama on social feeds. So before anyone declares that the 29th of October was the end, or mocks the people who felt shaken that day, we should ask a different question. What did the Hopi actually say? What belongs to their elders? What was never theirs to begin with? And why did this comet arrive when it did? Because dates come and go, comets pass, but the mind knows when a moment matters. Something in us reacts before logic arrives, and that is where this story truly begins. What came next was confusion. Some said the 29th of October marked the end. Some said it marked the beginning, but no one paused to ask why this date stirred fear across continents. Events do not create fear on their own. Fear rises when people sense alignment, when a moment in the present feels connected to something old, something recorded long before satellites or telescopes, something spoken by elders who watched the world with a different kind of awareness. The Comet and the Misunderstanding. People rushed to match 3I/Atlas with the Hopi blue star. But the Hopi never used the names that outsiders throw around online. They never told their prophecy in a single dramatic speech. Their warnings were carried in fragments across generations. Each elder added context. Each storyteller expanded meaning. Their words lived in ritual, not in magazines or blogs. Yet whenever the world feels unstable, outsiders grab one phrase from them and turn it into panic. So let us clear the field. The Hopi did speak of a sign in the sky. They did speak of a celestial visitor that appears before purification, but the way they described it was not simple. It was layered, it was symbolic, and to understand it, we must understand the people who carried it. The Hopi are not a culture of theatrics. They are a people who watch cycles. They know flood cycles, drought cycles, star cycles. They believe the earth remembers every act done upon it. They believe humanity rises and falls in patterns. They say we have lived in several worlds before this one. Each world ended because people forgot how to live with balance. And when the old world fell, the next world began only after a time of cleansing, a time when people either changed or vanished. Their prophecies are not about dates. They are about patterns of behavior. They warn of greed. They warn of pride. They warn of turning away from the natural order. According to Hopi elders, when humans chase power at all costs, the earth responds. When humans lose their humility, the sky responds. And when humans forget who they are, the Creator steps aside and lets their actions play out. Now we move to the question that hangs over this entire script. Did the Hopi say a comet would strike the earth? No, but they did say something would fall from the sky, something bright enough to make the world pause, something that marks the final sign. And here is where the confusion about the 29th of October 2025 began. The internet saw a comet, people remembered the Hopi prophecy, and they tried to force both into a perfect match. But the Hopi never said the sign would be a comet. Without context, they never said it would be a single-day event, and they never tied it to any calendar date. So what did they actually say? And why did the 29th of October feel so heavy? To answer that, we must understand the ninth sign. We must understand the blue star, and we must understand the figure many Hopi elders called the purifier. But before the purifier enters the story, we need to step back and see the larger structure of their warnings. The 9 signs and the world they warned about. The 9 signs describe a world unraveling. The Hopi elders listed them slowly. Each was a shift in human behavior. Each was a break in the natural order, and each has already come to pass. Outsiders treat these signs like bullet points in a trivia list, but that is not how the Hopi speak of them. They describe them as a sequence of moral failures. The first sign spoke of pale-skinned men arriving across the ocean. They came with weapons. They came with intention. They claimed land that was not theirs. The Hopi watched the early arrivals with suspicion, then fear, because their old teachings had warned them. A stranger would come from far away. A stranger would bring change, and the Hopi would have to decide whether to resist or adapt. The second sign spoke of wagons that moved without animals. The Hopi had no word for a wheel when they first heard this warning. They pictured a circular object that rolled across the land. When the first European carriages arrived, pulled by horses, the Hopi elders marked another sign. Not because of the wheels themselves, but because the arrivals signaled a new kind of movement, a new kind of expansion, a new hunger for land. The third sign spoke of animals that looked like buffalo, but were not buffalo. These were cattle brought by Europeans. The Hopi understood that animals reflect the consciousness of their keepers. They believed foreign animals would reshape the land, and they did. Grazing patterns shifted, soil patterns changed, sacred fields were damaged. Again, the sign was not about the animal itself, but the mindset it represented. The fourth sign spoke of long iron snakes. Outsiders call this exaggeration, but the Hopi word carries meaning. The railroads cut through their land like steel serpents. They brought more settlers. They brought industry. They brought noise. And they brought a shift in how people treated the earth. The fifth sign described a web across the earth. The Hopi did not know about power grids, telegraph lines, or global communication. Yet their elders spoke of a network that would connect nations. They warned that the web would carry people away from spirit and toward distraction, a web that traps minds in noise. The sixth sign spoke of stone rivers. This is the most misunderstood. Outsiders mock the description. But look at your highway systems. Look at the long gray paths carved into the earth. Look at how they pull people across states without seeing the land beneath them. They are rivers made of stone and oil. The seventh sign spoke of the seas turning black. The Hopi elders warned that when the waters darken, the world will struggle to breathe. The earth will gasp. The balance between air and ocean will break. Anyone who watched news footage from the Gulf of Mexico knows this image is real. Oil spills turn the ocean into a field of poison. The eighth sign spoke of young people wearing long hair like the Hopi. Outsiders laugh at this, but it had a spiritual meaning. It meant the youth were seeking something deeper. It meant they felt a loss inside themselves. It meant the world was searching for meaning after decades of war. These 8 signs are not simple predictions. They are moral markers, and every one of them has already happened. That brings us to the 9th sign, the one tied to the 29th of October 2025, the one tied to the blue star, and the one that has been twisted more than any line from any indigenous prophecy. Before we move into the 9th sign, stay with me. If you want more of these teachings, hit subscribe, not out of fear, but because this knowledge is scattered across cultures, and gathering it matters. People speak of the 9th sign as if it were a simple event, a bright object in the sky, an announcement from the heavens, but the Hopi elders described it with far more weight. In their words, the final sign appears when a sacred figure returns. The sign is not just a light, it is a message, a warning, and a mirror for humanity. This is where the idea of the blue star enters the story. Some call it the blue kachina. Some call it the purifier. Outsiders think this is just folklore. But for the Hopi, it represents the moment when the world shows its true face, when illusions die, when lies collapse, when nothing remains hidden. The Hopi say the blue star appears when the old world reaches exhaustion, when greed hits its limit, when people lose the ability to listen, when nations treat the earth like a resource rather than a home. In that moment, something bright crosses the sky, something that forces people to face the cost of their actions. Scientists say a comet is nothing but ice and rock. They say a blue glow is caused by ionization. But the Hopi use spiritual language for physical events. Their words do not contradict science. They add meaning to it. They teach that the sign in the sky is the final reminder that humanity has run out of time to correct its course. And that brings us to the moment when 3 I/ATLs appeared. Not a comet from our sun, a visitor from another star. Its path was long, its silence was heavy, its timing felt intentional, and its appearance matched the symbol of an object turning blue as it approaches a star. People rushed to claim it. People rushed to deny it. But the Hopi never told anyone to force an interpretation. They only said that when the sign comes, the world will feel it before they see it. They said people will sense pressure on the mind, a stirring in the heart, a sudden awareness that something is shifting in the unseen world. That is exactly what happened. In late October, people felt uneasy before the news broke. They felt restless. They woke at strange hours. They felt as if something was watching, not in a fearful way, but in a way that felt familiar, something ancient that had returned. Many claimed the blue star must be a specific object, but Hopi elders never spoke of a label. They did not care about names. They cared about patterns. They cared about how humanity behaves when it sees something that cannot be ignored. The Hopi say, the purifier is not a comet. It is a process. It is a cleansing of illusions. It is the removal of lies we told ourselves. It is the collapse of systems built on pride. It is the moment when every hidden motive rises to the surface. People expect the purifier to destroy nations with fire. But the Hopi spoke of fire in more than one sense. Fire is heat. Fire is conflict. Fire is revelation. Fire is truth burning through what cannot withstand it. When the purifier moves through the world, nothing false survives. Look at the world right now. Look at the systems collapsing. Look at powerful institutions losing control. Look at governments scrambling to explain events they no longer understand. Look at storms that form outside normal cycles. Look at conflicts that escalate without logic. Look at technologies that reshape human behavior faster than we can adjust. The purifier works through disruption. It removes comfort first. It removes predictability second. It removes illusions last. And once illusions collapse, humanity must confront itself. This is what the Hopi meant when they said the ninth sign would signal the final stage. Not the end of the earth, the end of arrogance, the end of arrogance, the end of corruption, the end of pretending that we can take without giving. And this is where the most misunderstood part appears. The Hopi warned that when the purifier arrives, a figure would walk the earth, a figure they call the true white brother. Outsiders turned this into a spectacle. They claimed it meant a single chosen man, but Hopi writings describe something different. They describe a consciousness, a moral force, a being who seeks the ones who still live in balance. If this figure finds no one aligned with truth, the Hopi say the world will be wiped clean, not out of anger, out of necessity, for life cannot continue on a foundation of decay. But if the figure finds people who still remember the old ways, people who still live with humility, then those people will carry the next world. They will survive the cleansing. They will rebuild what comes after. Why the Hopi warned about technological arrogance? The Hopi elders warned that technology without moral grounding becomes a danger. They said humanity would one day create a network of light across the sky. They warned it would distract the mind. They said people would trust machines more than their own intuition. They said the world would move faster than the human spirit could follow. Everything they warned about is visible today. People spend more time with screens than with each other. People treat information like noise. People treat the earth like a warehouse. People treat spiritual teachings like entertainment. And people forget how to listen to the voice inside them. The Hopi say this spiritual deafness is the real danger. It is worse than storms, worse than earthquakes, worse than war. Because when people lose the inner voice, they lose the ability to change. That is why the sign in the sky matters. It forces people to pause. It forces them to reflect. It forces them to question whether they have drifted too far from the path. We need to remember something important. The Hopi never said the ninth sign would kill everyone. They said the ninth sign would push people to choose. Some will harden, some will awaken, some will cling to the old world, some will step into the next. This date on a calendar was treated like a headline. They treated it like a trend. But something about that day carried a heaviness that statistics cannot measure. It was not only the sighting of a possible blue comet, it was the timing. It was the atmosphere. It was the strange sense of pressure people felt before the news broke. It was the feeling that the sky had become a stage for something humanity was not ready to face. What happened on that day was simple on the surface. Astronomers reported a bright moving object with a distinct blue glow. Its path was unusual. Its speed was unusual, and the silence surrounding it felt deliberate. Soon after, government agencies released statements that felt rushed, as if they wanted the public to stop asking questions. But the Hopi view does not measure events by distance or speed. The Hopi measure events by their effect on the inner life. They look at signs as signals sent to the heart. They look at celestial events as reflections of spiritual conditions. They look at timing as part of a larger pattern. And this is why the 29th of October mattered. It aligned with the state of the world. A world dragged into spiritual exhaustion. A world held together by systems that barely function. A world where people turn on each other faster than they turn toward truth. A world where noise drowns out meaning. A world where comfort became a cage. The Hopi said the final sign appears when the world reaches a point where it can no longer lie to itself. That point is not marked by disasters alone. It is marked by the internal collapse of integrity. It is marked by the failure of leaders to lead. It is marked by the loss of basic human decency. It is marked by people who feel the truth stirring inside them, but pretend they feel nothing. The 29th of October felt like the sky holding up a mirror. It forced people to confront themselves. It forced them to notice how tired they are, how detached they have become, how numb their spirit feels, how the world around them no longer resembles the world they grew up in. Ancient cultures spoke of comets as messengers, not because they feared the science, but because they understood the symbolism. A comet cuts across the sky like a line drawn through a sentence. It interrupts the rhythm of the heavens. It challenges the normal order. It arrives unannounced. It leaves without warning. It appears when the world needs to wake up. In the past, rulers feared comets because they were reminders that they were not in control. Kingdoms collapsed during comet years. Civilizations faced droughts, plagues, or political turmoil. People saw patterns, even when scholars dismissed them. They understood that a heavenly visitor often matched a time of inner collapse. The Hopi were not alone in this view. The Chinese called comets the breath of heaven. Babylonians called them swords of fire. Medieval mystics said comets tore open the boundary between the visible and the unseen. The Maya embedded their meaning in cycles. Early Christians saw them as omens before revelations. Indigenous people across continents used comets to mark turning points. When multiple cultures agree on a symbol, you must stop calling it superstition. You must start calling it memory. The comet warning is not about a rock falling. It is about a world losing its center. It is about a spiritual imbalance so great that nature begins to respond. It is about a collective moral crisis, a society that forgot how to think, a people who run from silence, a generation trapped between comfort and emptiness. This is why the Hopi said, the ninth sign appears when humanity forgets how to live in balance, when you strip the earth, when you poison the seas, when you fake connection, when you replace meaning with distraction, when you chase pleasure to avoid your own thoughts. A comet appears in the sky when humanity sinks too far into forgetting. People want a scientific explanation. They want numbers. They want safety and logic. But the truth is simple. Science describes the surface. Prophecy describes the meaning. Both matter. Both are real. Both speak to different parts of the human being. Most people think prophecy means prediction. It does not. Prophecy means pattern. Prophecy means recognition. Prophecy means that human behavior repeats in cycles. The Hopi were not predicting events. They were describing the consequences of forgetting. Modern people struggle with this because they attach meaning only to what they can measure. If they cannot put it in a chart, they ignore it. If they cannot analyze it, they dismiss it. If they cannot prove it, they laugh at it. But proof is not the same as truth, and denial is not the same as wisdom. The Hopi say a person fails to see signs when their inner world is cluttered, when their mind moves too fast, when their spirit is numb, when they cling to the old world even as it collapses under their feet. This is why so many people miss the weight of the 29th of October. They saw a comet. They did not see the message hidden behind it. They heard the news. They did not hear the warning meant for their soul. People today live in a distracted state. They stare at screens for hours. They lose their sense of time. They stay awake at night without knowing why. Their minds feel tired, even when they do nothing. Their hearts feel restless. Their sleep feels shallow. Their emotions feel unpredictable. They assume this is stress, but stress is only the surface. Something deeper is happening. The Hopi said, the world becomes loud when people disconnect from their center. Noise fills the silence. Chaos fills the gaps. Confusion fills the mind. This is exactly what we see today. And that is why the sign matters. Not because the sky changed, but because people felt something inside them shift. This is the point in the script where your voice needs to rest inside the story for a moment, because you need to understand what the Hopi meant when they said the sign appears when the world reaches the threshold. The threshold between two worlds. The Hopi described the end of a world as a moment of choice. They did not say everyone would perish. They did not say everyone would survive. They said humanity would divide by consciousness. One group clings to the dying world. One group rises into the next. The dying world is driven by fear. The rising world is driven by awareness. The dying world runs from silence. The rising world seeks it. The dying world chases illusions. The rising world seeks truth. This division is not political. It is spiritual. It is psychological. It is personal. It is happening inside homes, inside relationships, inside individuals. Some people feel themselves waking up. Some feel themselves falling apart. Some feel both. A world ends when enough people forget how to live. A world begins when enough people remember. The comet was not the cause. The comet was the mirror. And this is the perfect place to ask a quiet question, delivered in this voice without pressure. If you are drawn to these kinds of hidden teachings, if you sense the deeper patterns behind events, then stay with this work. Subscribe so you do not miss what comes next, because the signs will escalate and the teachings that explain them will matter more with each passing month. The Hopi did not talk about bunkers, weapons, or supplies. They never said the strong survive. They never said the wealthy survive. They never said the people with resources survive. The Hopi said something far more uncomfortable. They said only the ones who remain spiritually intact will move into the fifth world. For them, survival was not physical. It was moral. It was psychological. It was spiritual. It depended on the state of the heart, not the size of the shelter. They warned that the fifth world can hold only those who still carry conscience, those who can sense truth without needing proof, those who live in honesty, those who can sit with silence without collapsing, those who understand the weight of their own thoughts. This sounds strange to people raised in the fourth world, because the fourth world taught you that survival is physical. It taught you to fight. It taught you to compete. It taught you to conquer. It taught you to treat life like a race. But the Hopi did not see life as a race. They saw it as a test of character. They saw it as a test of humility. They saw it as a test of balance. They believed that those who fail these tests cannot build a new world, even if they survive the old one. This brings us to the heart of their teaching. The Hopi said the fifth world demands a different type of human being. A human being who remembers. A human being who can see beyond fear. A human being who does not break when illusions break. A human being who understands that the cycle you are living through is older than any nation and larger than any belief. People think the ninth sign is a physical event. They wait for a blue comet. They wait for a falling station. They wait for a bright streak across the horizon. But the Hopi elders said something different in private teachings. They said the ninth sign is twofold. It appears in the sky. Then it appears in consciousness. The outer sign shocks the world. The inner sign divides it. Look at what happened after the 29th of October. Half the population laughed it off. Half felt something they could not explain. If you listen to people talk online, you will notice this pattern. Some feel pressure in their chest. Some feel waves of anxiety for no reason. Some feel strange dreams. Some feel vivid memories from childhood. Some feel time moving strangely. Some feel a sense of urgency. Some feel watched. Some feel guided. Some feel lost. All of these are reflections of a world shifting under your feet. A sky sign becomes prophecy only when it changes the inner life. If the sky changes and your soul stays numb, the sign passes without meaning. But if the sky changes and something inside you stirs, then the prophecy is active. That stirring is the sign. Within the sign, it reveals who is stepping into the fifth world and who is slipping deeper into the collapse of the fourth. Why comets arrive during moral collapse? Ancient people linked comets to moral decline. This was not because they feared the light in the sky. It was because they noticed patterns. Comets appeared during times of corruption, times of spiritual neglect, times of political instability, times of famine, times of war, times of social decay. They saw comets as reminders that heaven watches human behavior, and that human behavior carries consequences. History reflects this pattern. The Halley sightings matched years of turmoil. The Great Comet of 1811 aligned with revolutions and global tension. The 1994 Shoemaker-Levy event arrived during a decade of rapid moral decline, masked by comfort and distraction. Each time the skies marked the condition of the earth. This raises an uncomfortable question. If the Hopi saw the 29th of October as a sign, what does that say about the state of humanity? You feel the answer. You see it in the news. You sense it in daily life. You notice it in the way people treat each other. You notice it in the rise of anger, the rise of despair, the rise of confusion, the rise of panic, the rise of emptiness. These are not small symptoms. These are signs of a world losing its inner structure. When the heart collapses, the world collapses. When people lose meaning, societies break. When people forget the sacred, nature responds. Comets mark these moments because they reflect the truth humans try to avoid. Hopi warned about false signs. They said the world would enter a stage where people would confuse artificial events with real ones. They warned that governments and institutions might create distractions to hide the true warning. They said people must learn to sense the difference between manufactured fear and genuine spiritual signals. This is why the ninth sign is confusing. Some experts say the comet was normal. Some say it was a classified object. Some say it was a weather event. Some say it was debris. Some say it was a hoax. But the Hopi said the real sign is recognized by the inner life, not the news. You know a real sign because your conscience reacts before your mind can explain it. That is why so many people felt uneasy on the 29th of October. Even before the reports came out, the soul sensed a shift. The mind caught up later. The Hopi said, that is how a true sign arrives. Quiet, soft, deep. It touches the center of the human being before it appears in the sky. The Hopi said that once the ninth sign appears, the world begins its cleansing. This is not a dramatic event at first. It starts in small ways. Systems fail. Leaders lose control. Nations weaken. People turn on each other. Truth becomes rare. Lies become normal. Confusion spreads. Moral clarity fades. The earth responds with storms, earthquakes, fires, and unpredictable events. Not as punishment, but as correction. If you pay attention, this has already begun. You can feel it in the way life moves. You can sense the instability. You can see institutions struggling. You can see the tension rising. You can see the push towards something new. What you cannot see yet is the moment when the old world finally breaks. But that moment is approaching. When people hear the word preparation, they think of storage, supplies, or physical shelters. The Hopi never taught this. They taught inner preparation. They taught spiritual readiness. They taught moral clarity. They said that when the world enters purification, your inner state becomes your shield. Your character becomes your shelter. Your integrity becomes your protection. The Hopi insisted that the storms coming are not only physical, they are mental, they are emotional, they are spiritual. They said the true danger is not what happens outside you. The true danger is what happens inside you. When the pressure rises, look at the world now. People lose themselves over small disruptions. People break under minor stress. People panic when the predictable becomes uncertain. Imagine what happens when the old systems fall. Imagine what happens when the world is forced to confront truth it avoided for decades. Those who collapse inside will not handle the collapse outside. This is why the Hopi placed such weight on balance. They said a person who keeps balance during chaos can walk through fire without losing their center. Balance to them meant something simple: live in honesty, live in humility, live in alignment with conscience. When these qualities stay intact, the storms pass through you, not into you. You may wonder why anxiety, depression, emptiness, and identity confusion have risen to levels never seen before. They treat it as a medical issue alone, but a spiritual crisis often appears as a mental one. When the world loses its relationship with truth, the human mind loses its stability. The soul tries to correct you by making you uncomfortable. That discomfort is not punishment, it is guidance. You may feel tired for no reason. You may feel restless before a major event. You may feel disconnected from your old life. You may feel drawn to silence. You may feel pulled toward nature. You may lose interest in shallow conversations. This is the inner world shifting as the outer world approaches a threshold. When a prophecy reaches its final stage, people feel it before they understand it. They sense closures. They sense endings. They sense transformations. They sense they cannot keep living the same way. This is the purification at the personal level. The world cannot change unless individuals change first. You may not realize it, but this process is already happening to you. The Hopi did not imagine the end of their world as total destruction. They saw it as renewal. They believed every world must break so the next world can rise. They saw collapse as a reset. They believed that old systems must fall when they become corrupt. This was not fear for them, it was recognition. They believed destruction clears what cannot continue. In their eyes, the end is not a punishment. It is a cleansing meant to restore balance. This is why they carried no panic in their warnings. They spoke with calm. They spoke with clarity. They spoke as people who have seen cycles turn before. They did not cling to the fourth world. They prepared for the fifth. The fifth world, and the kind of people who will enter it. They said the fifth world will rise slowly. It will be built by people who kept their character intact. It will be shaped by people who resisted corruption, even when the world normalized it. It will be led by people who value truth over comfort. These are the ones who walk into the next age. The fifth world is not a fantasy. It is a stage of human consciousness that returns people to simplicity, honesty, and connection with life. It is a world where the sacred becomes central again. A world where technology is no longer worshipped. A world where nature is not treated as a resource but as a companion. To reach it, humanity must shed everything that keeps it trapped in the fourth world. And that shedding is what you see happening right now across the earth. No prophecy stands alone. Every warning is linked to human behavior. The comet that appeared on the 29th of October did not create the crisis. It revealed it. Humanity was already breaking. Nations already divided. People already hollowed out by numbness. Families already fractured by exhaustion. Minds already weakened by noise. The fourth world was already collapsing. The sky event pulled the curtain back. A sign does not cause collapse. A sign marks it. And when a cosmic event aligns with moral decay, ancient cultures paid attention. Modern people dismiss this because they worship certainty. But certainty does not save you when the world enters a cycle of correction. Awareness does. Some felt fear. Some felt nothing. Some felt clarity. Some felt confusion. People react based on their inner life. Those with a stable inner world felt grounded that day. Those trapped in denial felt panic. Those who sensed the cycle understood something had shifted. Those disconnected from their spirit remained numb. This difference matters. It reveals the gap between those ready for the fifth world and those clinging to the fourth. It is not a gap of intelligence. It is a gap of awareness. The Hopi taught that awareness is the currency of the new world, and many people have lost it. Why institutions fear ancient prophecy? Institutions dislike anything that cannot be controlled. Ancient warnings cannot be regulated. They cannot be monetized. They cannot be dismissed easily. When people take prophecy seriously, they begin to see through illusions. They begin to question authority. They begin to rely on conscience instead of external approval. This is dangerous for systems built on compliance. That is why governments often mock or suppress indigenous prophecy. They fear the power of a population that sees the world clearly. They fear people who recognize cycles. They fear people who know collapse is not the end. They fear people who understand that no institution can stop a cycle that has already begun. Hopi people emphasized character. They emphasized the heart. They emphasized conduct. They taught that signs appear not to frighten you, but to wake you up. They said the real danger is not the comet, not the falling star, not the collapse of a dwelling in the sky. The real danger is the collapse of the human spirit. When people lose the ability to listen to truth, the world becomes unstable. When people stop honoring the sacred, the land grows sick. When people forget their covenant, the cycle ends. The Hopi believe this cycle repeats because human beings repeat the same mistakes. They chase power. They chase comfort. They chase noise. They drown out conscience. They separate themselves from the earth. When enough people do this, the world enters imbalance. Prophecy becomes the natural response to imbalance. You do not wait for a sign. The signs arrive because of what humanity created. Signs do not appear randomly. They align with cycles. They signal thresholds. They appear when humanity reaches a point where the old world cannot continue. Look at the pattern. The world is unstable. Nations are restless. People are confused. Fires burn hotter. Storms strike harder. Oceans rise higher. Anxiety spreads faster. Trust collapses quicker. Humanity is exhausted. The fourth world is strained. Then a comet arrives, not on a quiet year, but in the middle of global disorder. Not in a time of peace, but in a time of fragmentation. Not when humanity is calm, but when humanity is spiritually starving. Ancient cultures saw cosmic events as messages, not because the sky sends threats, but because human beings need reminders. The timing of the comet coincides with a moment when the world is stretched thin. The sign meets the crisis. Comet has been a warning across civilizations. Why? Because ancient people understood something modern people ignore. The sky and the earth are not separate. Human consciousness and cosmic timing reflect each other. A comet does not cause collapse. It reveals it. It uncovers what has been rotting beneath the surface. It exposes the illusions people cling to. That is why civilizations trembled when comets appeared. They knew something had reached its limit. The science behind an interstellar visitor. Now we need to step into the part that many spiritual channels avoid, the science. Because if you ignore it, you miss half the message. When astronomers classified 3I/ATLAS as an interstellar object, they did it for a reason. Its path did not fit the normal patterns of comets that belong to our sun. Its speed and orbit marked it as a stranger passing through. This makes it only one of a small group of confirmed interstellar visitors, objects that came from beyond our star and cut through our system before drifting back into the dark. It is not alone in that category. It follows others that arrived in recent years and forced scientists to admit that our system is not sealed. We live on an open highway. Why does that matter spiritually? Because a sign that does not belong to our system carries a different weight in the human mind. A local comet says cycles inside our own neighborhood are shifting. An interstellar visitor says something larger is in motion. It hints at patterns that stretch beyond our sun, beyond our history, beyond our comfort. For the Hopi, the physical details would not cancel the spiritual meaning. They would complete it. The frozen gases, the dust, the trajectory, all of that is part of the body of the sign. The effect on the human heart is its soul. This is where you and I have to be honest. Most people will never read a research paper on interstellar objects. They will watch a short segment on television. They will scroll past a headline. They will forget the details in minutes. But they will remember one thing. There was something from outside. It passed through. It looked blue. And the world felt strange while it did. That is how modern science and ancient prophecy meet. Not in exact numbers, in the feeling that something foreign crossed the border of our familiar sky. What the Hopi actually said, and what they did not say. There is another hard truth hiding in this story. A large part of what people repeat as the Hopi Blue Star prophecy did not come from a full council of elders. It came from a few accounts shared with outsiders, then filtered through authors, lectures, and websites. One of the most popular versions comes from a man called White Feather, whose words were carried by a minister and later printed by a writer in the mid-20th century. From there, details were added, lines were rearranged, phrases like Blue Star Kachina spread across articles and forums, often without context or living Hopi voices to guide them. This does not mean the core warning is fake. It means the internet version is not the whole story. Several Hopi cultural workers have said that some widely shared lines do not match their teachings. They have warned that outsiders take pieces of their words and glue them to other ideas. They have watched their prophecy turned into a marketing tool for books, events, and fear. If you care about truth, that should bother you. The elders never published a neat list of 9 signs with dramatic headlines. They spoke within ceremony. They spoke in their own language. They spoke to their own people. They did not try to impress the rest of the world. Most of the time, the world did not care to listen. So when you hear a clean, dramatic version of the prophecy, remember this: you are hearing a mixture. Real Hopi warnings, outside summaries, New Age editions, Christian end times language, pasted on top of indigenous teaching. That mixture spreads faster than the patient, humble voice of the original keepers. This is why, in this script, we treat the Hopi words as a pattern, as a living warning about human behavior, not as a perfect countdown clock. We hold the possibility that 3i/Atalas may fit the 9th sign symbolically. We also hold the possibility that it does not, because humility demands that we leave room for what we do not know. What matters more is this: the pattern they described is already here. The greed, the pollution, the loss of conscience, the spiritual numbness. You do not need a perfect translation to see that the diagnosis is accurate. If you want to sit with more of these older patterns, I put together an esoteric knowledge playlist on this channel. It gathers videos on demons, forbidden texts, and other prophecies the religious establishment would rather you never hear. When this video ends, you will find the link in the pinned comment. Use it if your conscience pulls you there, not out of curiosity, but out of hunger for clarity. There is a skill we were never taught in school: how to listen to a prophecy without falling into panic or denial. Most people do one of two things. They either treat it like entertainment, or they let it terrify them. The first group says this: it is all stories. It is mythology. It is old people talking about the sky because they did not have science. They roll their eyes, then scroll to the next clip. The second group says this: the world is ending. Dates matter. Every light in the sky is a threat. They stock up. They obsess. They freeze. Both reactions miss the point. Real prophecy is not there to feed your fear. It is there to confront your behavior. It is not a script you watch. It is a mirror you stand in front of. If you see a date, a comet, a sign in the sky, and your first thought is survival gear, you missed the teaching. The Hopi did not record their warnings so the world could argue about star charts. They recorded them so their children would understand what happens when human beings forget who they are. Each sign is a description of character collapse before it is a description of an event. So how do you read a prophecy in a sane way? You treat dates as symbols, not guarantees. You treat signs as questions, not verdicts. You ask what the warning says about your life, not about your neighbor's life. You use the story to examine your own conscience. That is how ancient communities survived cycles. They adjusted their behavior. If you take nothing else from this video, take this. The point is not to guess whether 3I/ATALAS is the blue star. The point is to ask whether you have become the kind of person who can live in the fifth world if it arrives. If the ninth sign has begun. Now we return to the part of the story that everyone wants to know. Has the ninth sign begun? Is the comet the blue star? Are we in the purification? The honest answer is simple. We cannot be certain, but we can read the pattern. The 8 moral signs have already passed. The web over the earth, the stone rivers, the seas that turn black, the youth searching for meaning in a world of lies, the strangers crossing oceans, the iron snakes. Every one of these sits in our history, not our future. At the same time, the inner symptoms match the warning. A planet in spiritual exhaustion, minds flooded with distraction, bodies present but empty, a generation addicted to noise, leaders who speak without conscience, nations that treat the sacred as a joke. Then in the middle of that exhaustion, a blue visitor appears from outside our system, not during an age of balance, but during an age of confusion, not during a season of humility, but during a season of arrogance, not while humanity is listening, but while it is scrolling. On a prophetic level, that alignment is heavy. It does not prove anything. It does not settle debate. It does something more important. It demands a response from the heart. You can look at that alignment and laugh. You can look at it and tremble. You can look at it and listen. Only one of those reactions will serve you when the world keeps shaking. If the purification has begun, you will see one clear effect. Illusions will fail faster. Lies will crack in public. Secrets will leak. Hidden motives will rise to the surface. Systems built on manipulation will start to eat themselves. Look around. That process is already visible. Governments wrestling with instability. Corporations falling under the weight of their own corruption. Spiritual leaders exposed for the lives they lived in secret. Communities fractured by their own dishonesty. On the inside, people feel their own lies catching up to them. That is what purification looks like in real life. Not a fireball wiping out cities. A pressure that makes every false thing harder to maintain. If you are still with me, you already feel it. You feel that this is not just information, it is diagnosis. The question now is not what will happen, it is how you will live while it happens. The Hopi answer is hard and simple. Clean your life. That is the first preparation. Not your pantry, not your truck, your life. Clean your speech. Say what you mean. Stop playing games with your words. Clean your relationships. Leave the ones that rot your conscience. Strengthen the ones that keep you honest. Clean your habits. Move away from what dulls you. Move toward what sharpens you. Clean your attention. The blue star, if it has truly appeared, does not need more videos. It needs human beings who can hold silence without falling apart, who can sit under the sky without a screen in their hands, who can feel their own fear without running from it. That sounds small. It is not. A world made of such people is the fifth world. This is also why I keep that esoteric and demonology playlist ready for you, not to scare you, but to give you context. You live in a time when angels, demons, and old prophecies sit in the same mental folder as memes. You were never taught how to tell the difference. Those other videos dig into that difference. They will be waiting in the pinned comment after this one ends. Let us also face the other side. What if 3I/Atlas is not the blue star? What if the ninth sign is still ahead? Does that make this whole conversation meaningless? No. It makes it a rehearsal. If the sign has not arrived yet, then you have been given mercy. You have been given a preview of how it will feel when it does. A world hanging by a thread. People numb. A strange heaviness in the air. An object in the sky that refuses to fit in a neat box. If this was only a rehearsal, you saw what you did with it. Did you mock? Did you panic? Did you ignore? Did you listen? You do not control comets. You control rehearsal. And if this is the blue star, if the 29th of October is remembered by future generations as the day the ninth sign crossed our sky, then you are already living in a different story than the one you thought you were in. The fourth world would not be a distant theory, it would be a dying room. The fifth world would not be a myth, it would be a birth in progress. Under that reading, every choice from now on carries weight. Every act of honesty matters. Every act of cruelty matters. Every time you tell the truth when lying would be easier, you vote for the fifth world. Every time you numb yourself instead of listening, you vote for the collapse of the fourth. That may sound dramatic. It is not. It is how conscience works. It is how character forms. You do not meet the true white brother as a different person than you are today. You meet that presence as the sum of your daily choices. If that presence walks the earth and finds you clinging to lies, you will experience purification as loss. If it finds you clinging to truth, you will experience purification as relief. Now we come back to where the mind always wants to land. Is the prophecy literally fulfilled? Is the date correct? Is the comet the blue star? And the answer that matters most is still the same. The real question is not whether the comet is the blue star. The real question is not whether the 29th of October marks the ninth sign. The real question is this: who will you become as the world changes? Prophecies do not exist to satisfy curiosity. They exist to test character. They do not predict destruction. They warn you to realign. They warn you not to lose your character. They warn you to return to truth. They warn you to prepare your inner life. Signs can guide you, but only you choose how to live. Only you choose who you become. Only you choose whether you collapse with the fourth world or rise with the fifth. And when this video ends, I want you to do something that the algorithm will never suggest. Sit in silence for a few minutes. Remember the 29th of October. Remember how your body felt that week. Remember how the air felt. Remember where your mind went when you heard about the comet. Then when you come back, tell me in the comments what stayed with you from all of this. Not to flatter this channel, but to leave a record for others who feel the same unease. So when they scroll down, they realize they are not the only ones who sense that the sky was watching.